Welcome back. We just started to look at Exodus, and we'd gone through the preamble, and we just got to where the slaves had been there for 400 years, and they're crying out to God to get them out of this mess, basically. And then the Israelites underwent 3 oppressive decrees. The first was forced labour. They were put into forced labour, and they were made to work for their keep. Now, I'm sure at the time this was a real shock, because if you remember when Joseph was head honcho, they were basically living the life of Riley. So they were forced into slavery, forced into labour. And then a little way down the line, they were told to make bricks without straw, and bricks without straw makes a brick heavier. The straw is put into the brick to make it a lot lighter, but bricks made without straw would have been a lot heavier to carry. And basically the Egyptians were expecting the men to be have no energy and be completely knackered by the end of their shift, so to speak, and so they wouldn't be able to go back to their wives and have sex and create new generations, so they could bring the numbers of the Israelites down. But that didn't quite work. They actually had more babies during that time. And then the Pharaoh decided they were becoming too numerous, and they had to throw the baby boys that were being born to the Israelites into the River Nile to bring down the numbers. And thus we get to the story of Moses. Well, we all know the story of Moses. His mum put him in a little floating cocoon. The princess finds him, and she actually asks his mum to bring him up, and unbeknownst to her that he was his mum. And he was brought up in court, which was a massive step for anyone. Therefore, he was given the best education that not even money could buy in those days, and he would have grown up in court, more or less a brother to the Pharaoh's son, and he would have gone to what was effectively the Egyptian university. And do you know Cleopatra's Needle on the Thames? Well, Cleopatra's Needle, and there's another one in Rome, where there was one of those either side of the entrance to the Egyptian university. So if you want to go and touch something that Moses saw every day, go up to Cleopatra's Needle, which is by the side of the Thames, and give that a stroke. this made him far more educated than any of the other Hebrew slaves. He was a vastly educated man. And it says that he kept careful records of everything. He collected people's memories, as I've said, stories handed down from one family generation to the next. And he put them together in 5 books. But before that happened, he lost his temper with an Egyptian slave master, and he killed him. And he spent 40 years in the wilderness. Sort of like when he was spending 40 years in the wilderness with the people of Israel. And effectively, it's God preparing Moses for what was to come. Then we come to the famous burning bush. And what's remarkable about this isn't that the bush was burning and not being consumed. It was the fact that Moses makes 5 excuses why he couldn't do what God had asked him to do. How many times have we made excuses when God's asked us to do something? Oh, I can't do that. I can't do this. Well, Moses made 5. Count them. 5 times he tried to palm God off. First of all, he said, I'm insignificant. Who am I? And God said, I'll be with you. I am the important one, not you. That's a pretty good shutdown for starters. The second one was, I am ignorant. And God said, I'll make you a promise. I'll tell you what to say. Then Moses says, I am impotent. I can't convince them. They won't believe me. And God says, my power will be with you. You're going to do miracles. Moses is getting a little bit frustrated here. And he comes up with, I'm incompetent. I'm not eloquent. Basically, he had a stammer. And God says, your brother Aaron will be your prophet. And it's interesting, the word prophet here. God uses the word prophet. And a prophet is simply a mouthpiece. He should just pass on the message that he's being getting told. And then Moses' 5th excuse, I'm irrelevant, send somebody else. It's, here I am, Lord, send him. And how many times have we done that? How many times have we said, here I am, Lord? How many times have we sung that song? But then God says, okay, I'll send you. And we turn our backs and hightail it out of there. Well, Moses couldn't really, because God promised him a partner. 40 years on his own, and God promises Moses a partner. Well, Moses goes to the Pharaoh and says, let my people go, or there's going to be 10 plagues that affect you. And the Pharaoh's quite adamant, no, I'm not letting you people go. And then the 10 plagues ensue. And the 10 plagues are the Nile of blood, frogs, gnats and mosquitoes, flies, cattle disease, boils, hail, locusts, darkness, and the death of the firstborn. And what's interesting about this scenario is we see here that God is in control of the whole insect world. God's in control of every little part of his creation. Just like Jonah, when Jonah was, when the story of Jonah was is told, we see the bit with the whale, but we miss out the little bit when Jonah is sitting under a tree and God tells the worm to eat the roots of the tree so that he makes the tree die. He is even concerned with worms. And it gives you a tremendous sense of God's control over what he has created. And it really impacts me, the scale and the magnitude of God has created this enormous universe, and yet he can zoom in on a particular worm to do his bidding. There's a build up here in intensity with the plagues. You go from discomfort to disease to danger to death, and it's a building up of intensity, and the plagues gradually get worse and worse as Pharaoh and his people refuse to respond. In a lot of senses, this was a religious contest. This was a contest between gods. Every one of the plagues was an attack on a different one of the gods worshipped by the Egyptians. Khanum, the guardian of the Nile. Hapi, the spirit of the Nile. Osiris, the bloodstream of Osiris was the Nile. Heket, a frog-like god, a god of resurrection. Hathor, mother goddess, was a cow. Apis was a bull. Manavus was a bull. He was actually the sacred bull of Heliopolis. Seth was the protector of crops. There were 4 sun gods, and to top it all, Pharaoh was supposed to be divine in himself. These plagues were specifically directed at Egyptian gods, and the message was very simple. This God of the Hebrews is far more powerful than all of your gods. And still they didn't listen. Now, there is a strange aspect to these where Pharaoh's heart was hardened. 10 times his heart was hardened, but the first 7 times Pharaoh hardened his own heart. And God said, right, if that's the road you're taking, I'll help you on your way. And he helped him harden his heart the last 3 times. God only hardened Pharaoh's heart after he had repeatedly and deliberately hardened his own heart 7 times. And God says, if you want to go down that road, I'll help you down that road. The book of Revelation says, let him who is filthy be filthy still. There is no predestination in God's response to this. God responds to our choices. And if we persistently choose the wrong way, God will help us down that route to demonstrate his judgment if we refuse to be demonstration of his mercy. Then we come to the Passover, and this has a direct correspondence with the 10th plague. The firstborn of the family, of any family, Egyptian or Hebrew, would die unless they did something about it. They painted blood on their doorposts. Blood is scarlet, which is the hardest colour to see in the dark, but an angel would see it. And the angel of death would come to Egypt that night, and when he would see the blood, he would pass over the house. They had to get the blood, which meant an innocent life had to be shed to get the blood. They killed a 1-year-old ram. They put the blood on the doorposts, on the lintel and the doorposts, and left the bowl splattered on the doorstep. And they took the body inside and roasted it and ate it. And they had to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. So they prepared a load of unleavened bread. And they keep this feast every year. And the youngest member of a family has to say, what does all this mean? And the oldest member of the family has to say, this is what God did on the night when every firstborn baby died. And we were slaves, and we were saved because of the blood of the ram. It's an amazing story, and it's realistically the birth of a nation. It's the coming together for one cause in one incredible act by God. And that caused the nation to arise and leave Egypt. And next time, we'll follow their journey. God bless.